Chance encounters. Sophia Reeves pressed her forehead against the cool window of the shuttle bus, watching pine trees blur past as they climbed higher into the mountains. The tension that had coiled in her shoulders for months began to loosen with each mile of distance from the university research facility she'd called home. "Last stop, Whispering Pines Lodge," announced the driver, breaking into her thoughts. The lodge appeared through the mist like something from a fairy tale, a sprawling timber structure with gabled roofs and stone chimneys nestled among towering pines. Exactly the kind of isolation Sophia had been craving since the publication scandal had shattered her career. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," greeted the receptionist, a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair. "You must be Dr. Reeves. We have your cabin prepared." "Thank you," Sophia said, her voice soft from disuse. "I'm looking forward to some quiet." "We specialize in quiet," the woman smiled. "Though you should know we have one other guest staying in the cabin adjacent to yours. A writer. Keeps to himself mostly." Sophia nodded. Grateful the woman didn't recognize her name or the controversy that had followed it. She took her key and followed the stone path to her cabin, inhaling the scent of pine and earth. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. The cabin was cozy and rustic, with a small kitchenette, a living area with a stone fireplace, and a bedroom with windows overlooking the forest. Sophia unpacked her few belongings, including her field journal and hand lens, tools of her trade she couldn't bear to leave behind, even if she might never use them professionally again. By afternoon, the clouds had parted enough to reveal hiking trails meandering up the mountainside. Unable to resist, Sophia laced up her boots, tucked a small pack with water and trail mix into her pocket, and set out. The trail was peaceful, the forest floor springy beneath her feet. She paused occasionally to examine interesting fungi or plant specimens, jotting notes in her field journal out of habit. So absorbed was she in documenting a particularly unusual lichen that she didn't notice the darkening sky until the first fat raindrops splashed onto her page. "Perfect," she muttered, looking up to see ominous clouds gathering. She tucked her journal away and turned to head back, but the trail had become unfamiliar, the markers obscured by mist. The gentle rain quickly became a downpour. Sophia sought shelter under a rocky overhang, shivering as the temperature dropped. Checking her phone, she found no signal. The afternoon light was fading fast, and with it her confidence. "Hello?" called a voice through the rain. A figure emerged from the mist, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a weatherproof jacket. "Are you all right?" he asked, coming closer. "I'm a bit turned around," Sophia admitted, embarrassed. "And very wet." "You must be the botanist staying next door," he said, offering a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'm Ethan Mercer." "Sophia Reeves," she replied, surprised he knew her profession. "How did you—" The receptionist mentioned a botanist was checking in. "Plus, not many hikers stop to take notes on lichen during a brewing storm," he said with a gentle teasing in his voice. Despite herself, Sophia smiled. "Fair point." "Come on," Ethan said, extending his hand. "I know a shortcut back." Hesitantly, Sophia placed her hand in his. His fingers were warm despite the chill, and they closed around hers with reassuring strength. "Stay close," he said as they moved back into the rain. "The trail gets slippery." They picked their way down the mountain, Ethan's sure steps guiding them through the mist. When Sophia slipped on a muddy section, his arm shot out, catching her firmly around the waist. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice close to her ear. For a moment, they stood suspended in time, his arm around her, her hand gripping his jacket, their faces inches apart. Sophia felt a warmth that had nothing to do with exertion spreading through her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd been this close to someone. By the time they reached the lodge, they were both soaked through. Standing under the shelter of her cabin's porch, Sophia turned to thank her rescuer properly. In the soft porch light, she could see him clearly for the first time. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, kind eyes the color of amber, and a gentle smile that made something flutter in her chest. "Would you like to come in?" she offered impulsively. "I could make some tea. To warm up." Ethan's smile widened. I'd like that very much. As they stepped inside, Sophia knew that the storm had brought more than just rain to her mountain retreat. It had brought an unexpected encounter that, despite all her careful plans for solitude, felt strangely like the beginning of something new. Sheltered hearts. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she filled the kettle. Through the kitchen window, she could see the storm intensifying, rain lashing against the glass in silvery sheets. Behind her, Ethan stood awkwardly in the center of her cabin, dripping onto the wooden floor. Here, she said, handing him a towel. You should get dry. Thanks, he replied, running the towel through his dark hair. I didn't expect the weather to turn so quickly. The kettle whistled, and Sophia busied herself with brewing tea, grateful for the distraction. What had possessed her to invite a stranger into her cabin? The very isolation that had drawn her to Whispering Pines was now making her acutely aware of her vulnerability. Earl Grey or chamomile? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Chamomile, please. His voice was gentle, as if sensing her unease. I should introduce myself properly. I'm Ethan Mercer. I write mystery novels, or at least I used to. Sophia turned, 2 steaming mugs in hand. Used to? Ethan accepted the tea with a grateful nod, his fingers brushing hers momentarily. I haven't written a word in 8 months. He settled into an armchair by the unlit fireplace. My publisher is losing patience. Writer's block? Sophia asked, curling up on the sofa opposite him. Something like that. His eyes, warm and amber, reflected the soft lamplight. What brings a botanist to a remote mountain lodge in the off-season? Sophia stiffened, her grip tightening on her mug. How did you know I'm a botanist? Besides the plant sketches in your journal? His smile was kind, not mocking. You have the look, observant, detail-oriented. You noticed that lichen when most people wouldn't see anything but a rock. A small smile tugged at her lips. Professional hazard, I suppose. Outside, thunder cracked, making Sophia jump. Ethan rose and moved to the fireplace. Mind if I light this? It's getting colder. She nodded, watching as he skillfully arranged kindling and logs, his movements efficient and practiced. Soon, a small flame flickered to life, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. You didn't answer my question, Ethan said softly, returning to his seat. Why hide away up here? Perhaps it was the storm creating a bubble around them, or maybe it was the way he asked without demanding. Either way, Sophia found herself speaking. My research was discredited. The words tasted bitter. I spent 3 years studying a rare alpine plant with potential medicinal properties. My research partner published our findings without me, claiming the discovery for himself. That's terrible, Ethan said, his expression darkening. The scientific community believed him over me. He had connections I didn't. Sophia stared into the growing fire. So here I am hiding from my ruined career. You're not hiding, Ethan said firmly. You're healing. Something in his tone made Sophia look up. What are you healing from, Ethan Mercer? The firelight cast shadows across his face as he hesitated. My wife died 18 months ago. Cancer. He spoke the words simply, though Sophia could hear the depth of pain beneath them. After that, the words stopped coming. I'm so sorry, Sophia whispered. She was my first reader, my best critic. His smile was sad. Without her, the stories don't seem to matter anymore. The rain drummed against the roof as they sat in silence, 2 wounded souls sharing the warmth of the fire. Would you like more tea? Sophia asked eventually. Ethan glanced at the window. I should probably head back to my cabin. In this? Sophia gestured to the storm. You'd be drenched again in seconds. As if to emphasize her point, lightning flashed, followed immediately by a crash of thunder that shook the cabin. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out, leaving only the fire's glow. Looks like the decision's been made for me, Ethan said with a soft laugh. In the firelight, they talked for hours. Ethan told her about his books, a series featuring a botanist-turned-detective that now seemed like prophetic irony. Sophia shared stories of her fieldwork in remote locations, the joy of discovering plant species that few had ever documented. As the night deepened and the storm showed no signs of abating, Sophia made up the sofa with blankets and pillows. "I'm sorry I don't have a guest room," she said. "This is perfect," Ethan assured her. "Thank you for the shelter." Later, lying in her bed listening to the storm, Sophia found herself acutely aware of Ethan's presence in the next room. It had been so long since she'd opened up to anyone, longer still since she'd felt this strange flutter of connection. Just before dawn, the storm finally subsided. Sophia woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet movement in her kitchen. Wrapping her robe around herself, she emerged to find Ethan at the stove making breakfast. "Hope you don't mind," he said, looking slightly embarrassed. "I wanted to thank you for your hospitality." "Not at all," she replied, accepting a mug of coffee. Through the window, the forest glistened with raindrops, the morning sun turning each one into a tiny rainbow. "The trails will be too muddy for hiking today," Ethan observed. "Probably," Sophia agreed, sipping her coffee. Their eyes met over the rims of their mugs, a question hovering between them. "I have a chess set," Ethan offered, "and several books. If you'd like company today?" Sophia smiled, surprising herself. "I'd like that very much." Part 3. Blooming trust. 3 days after the storm, Sophia and Ethan fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings began with shared coffee on her porch, watching mist rise from the valley below. Afternoons were spent exploring the lodge grounds once the trails dried, with Sophia pointing out interesting flora and Ethan taking notes. His writer's curiosity awakened. Today, they had ventured further up the mountain to a meadow Sophia had spotted from her bedroom window. It was carpeted with wildflowers, purple lupines, golden balsam root, and delicate white yarrow. "This is incredible," Ethan said, turning slowly to take in the panorama. "Like something from a dream." Sophia knelt in the grass, gently examining a cluster of blue flowers. "These are gentians. They're used in traditional medicine for digestive ailments." She glanced up at him, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "And these," she pointed to tiny white blossoms, "are valerian. Natural sedatives." Ethan crouched beside her, his notebook open. "My detective would love this. Poisonous plants are always useful in mysteries. Planning my murder already?" Sophia teased, surprising herself with her lightness. "Never," Ethan replied, his voice suddenly serious. "Though I might be planning a new book." Sophia looked at him in surprise.
Really?
He nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "First time I've felt the itch to write in months. Being around you, it's inspiring." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Sophia looked away first, her cheeks warming. "Tell me about your book idea," she said, moving to sit on a sun-warmed rock. Ethan joined her, their shoulders almost touching. "A mystery set in a botanical research station. A rare plant with miraculous properties disappears, along with the researcher who discovered it." "Sounds familiar," Sophia said wryly. "Except in my version, the researcher gets justice, and maybe finds something more valuable than scientific recognition along the way." His voice dropped lower, and Sophia felt her heart quicken. "What could be more valuable than professional validation?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's hand moved to cover hers, his touch gentle. "Connection. Understanding. A chance to start again." The meadow seemed to still around them, even the wildflowers holding their breath. "I've been alone a long time," Sophia admitted. "Even before the scandal. My work was everything." "I know the feeling," Ethan said. "After Claire died, I shut myself away with my grief. This is the first time I've felt present in the world again." His honesty disarmed her. Before she could second-guess herself, Sophia leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, hesitant at first, then deepening as Ethan responded, his hand coming up to cradle her cheek. When they pulled apart, both were slightly breathless. "I didn't plan that," Sophia said, her voice unsteady. "The best plot twists are never planned," Ethan replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. They spread a blanket in the meadow and shared the lunch they'd packed: crusty bread, local cheese, and ripe berries. As the afternoon mellowed toward evening, they lay side by side watching clouds drift across the azure sky. Tell me about your research, Ethan said, propping himself on one elbow to look at her. The real story, not the scandal. No one had asked her that in months. Sophia found herself explaining her discovery, an alpine flower with compounds that showed promise for treating inflammatory diseases. As she spoke, her hands animated, her voice growing passionate, Ethan watched her with undisguised admiration. "You're remarkable," he said when she finished. "And your colleague is a fool if he thinks he can claim your brilliance as his own." "It doesn't matter now," Sophia sighed. "My credibility is shot." "What if you could prove it was your discovery?" Ethan asked. "Don't you keep research journals?" Sophia sat up. "Of course, but documentation, evidence, the building blocks of any case," Ethan said, his writer's mind clearly working. "Your journals would have dates, observations, the progression of your thinking." Hope flickered briefly before Sophia tamped it down. "The academic world doesn't work like your detective novels." "Maybe not," Ethan conceded, "but truth has a way of surfacing." As the sun began its descent, turning the meadow golden, they packed up their picnic. On the hike down, Ethan took her hand, and Sophia didn't pull away. Back at the lodge, they lingered outside her cabin, reluctant for the day to end. "Have dinner with me tonight," Ethan said. "I'll cook." "You cook?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Another hidden talent," he grinned. 8 o'clock? "I'll bring wine," she promised. Later, stepping into Ethan's cabin, Sophia was struck by the difference from her own. Books were everywhere, stacked on tables, lining makeshift shelves. His laptop sat open on a desk by the window, a document with actual words on the screen. "You've been writing?" she observed. Ethan glanced at the laptop, a mixture of pride and vulnerability on his face. "Just starting." "Thanks to you." Dinner was simple but delicious. Pasta with wild mushrooms Ethan had collected under the guidance of the lodge's chef. They talked easily, the wine loosening their reserve, their knees touching beneath the small table. After dinner, they moved to the sofa before the fire. The night air had grown chilly, and Ethan wrapped a soft blanket around them both. "Sophia," he said quietly, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I don't know what happens when we leave this mountain, but I know I don't want whatever this is between us to end." She turned to face him, taking in the gentle strength of his features, the warmth in his eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of this, of what comes after. Going back to a world that's already judged me?" "You don't have to face it alone," Ethan said, drawing her closer. Their lips met again, this time with growing hunger. Sophia's hands moved to his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath her touch. Ethan's fingers traced the curve of her spine, pulling her against him. "Stay," he whispered against her lips. In answer, Sophia deepened the kiss, letting the blanket slide from her shoulders as she surrendered to the warmth building between them, feeling for the first time in months that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Shadows of the past morning light filtered through the cabin's curtains, casting a golden glow across the rumpled sheets. Sophia stirred, momentarily disoriented before remembering where she was. Beside her, Ethan slept peacefully, one arm draped protectively across her waist. His face relaxed in slumber. She studied him. This man who had somehow slipped past her carefully constructed defenses in less than a week. His dark lashes against his cheeks, the slight stubble along his jaw, the scar above his eyebrow she'd kissed last night when he'd told her about falling from a tree as a boy. Carefully, she eased out from under his arm and padded to the kitchen, wrapping herself in his discarded shirt. She was brewing coffee when strong arms encircled her from behind, and Ethan's lips pressed against her neck. "Morning," he murmured, his voice husky with sleep. Sophia leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his chest. "Morning." They carried their coffee to the porch, sitting side by side on the steps, watching the mountains emerge from the mist. Neither spoke of the night before or of the inevitable end to their mountain idyll. Sophia's reservation was for 2 more days, Ethan's for 3. "I want to show you something today," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. "A place I found on my first day here." After breakfast, they hiked along a narrow trail that wound behind the lodge. Ethan led her to a secluded glade where a small waterfall tumbled into a clear pool. "It's beautiful," Sophia breathed, taking in the moss-covered rocks and the delicate ferns that lined the pool's edge. "I came here to think about Claire," Ethan said quietly. "To say goodbye, in a way." He turned to Sophia, his eyes sincere. "I didn't expect to find a reason to say hello again." The confession hung between them, laden with meaning. Sophia stepped closer, placing her palm against his cheek. "I'm glad you did." Their kiss was gentle, a promise neither was ready to voice aloud. They spent the morning by the pool, Sophia identifying the various plants while Ethan wrote in his notebook, occasionally reading passages aloud for her opinion. The easy rhythm they'd established felt both fragile and profound. Returning to the lodge for lunch, they were surprised to find the previously empty parking area now holding 3 cars. "Looks like we have company," Ethan remarked. Sophia felt a flicker of disappointment. Their private sanctuary was being invaded. In the lodge's small dining room, they found a group of new arrivals seated around the largest table. Sophia was heading to a table in the corner when she heard a familiar voice that made her blood run cold. "Sophia? Sophia Reeves, is that you?" She turned slowly to face Dr. Marcus Harrington, her former research partner and the man who had stolen her work. He was rising from the table, his handsome face wearing an expression of pleasant surprise that didn't reach his calculating eyes. "Marcus," she acknowledged, her voice tight. "What brings you here?" "Conference in Denver. Thought I'd take a detour for some mountain air before heading back to Boston." His gaze shifted to Ethan, standing protectively at her side. "And you are?" "Ethan Mercer," he replied coolly, clearly sensing Sophia's distress. "Sophia's friend." Marcus's eyebrows rose fractionally. "The mystery writer?" "Interesting company you're keeping, Sophia." She felt Ethan stiffen beside her but kept her focus on Marcus. "If you'll excuse us, we were about to have lunch." "Actually," Marcus said, moving closer and lowering his voice, "I've been trying to reach you. There have been some developments with the research. I'd like to discuss them with you privately." Sophia's heart raced. "What developments?" Marcus glanced meaningfully at Ethan. "Perhaps we could talk later? Say before dinner?" Before she could answer, one of Marcus's companions called out, "Marcus, tell them about the grant. The one based on Sophia's work." A flash of annoyance crossed Marcus's face before his smooth mask returned. "Later, perhaps," he said to Sophia, then rejoined his colleagues. Throughout lunch, Sophia could barely taste her food. Marcus's presence felt like a shadow had fallen across the sunlit days she'd spent with Ethan. She was aware of Marcus watching them from across the room, his gaze calculating. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked softly. "That's him," she said, her voice barely audible. "The one who stole my research." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes, followed by a protective anger. "What do you think he wants?" "I don't know. Nothing good." When they finished eating, Marcus intercepted them before they could leave. "Sophia, please." 5 minutes. Ethan squeezed her hand. "I'll be right outside if you need me." Reluctantly, Sophia followed Marcus to a quiet corner of the lobby. He wasted no time with pleasantries. "The botanical extraction process isn't working," he admitted. "The compounds are breaking down during synthesis." "You mean my extraction process?" Sophia corrected coldly. Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Look, things got complicated. Politics, funding concerns. I did what I had to do. You stole 3 years of my work, and I'm offering you a chance to reclaim it," Marcus countered. "The pharmaceutical company is getting impatient. They need results, and I need your notes, the ones you didn't include in the lab records." Sophia stared at him, understanding dawning. "You can't replicate my results because you don't have my complete methodology." A muscle in Marcus's jaw twitched. "I'm offering you co-authorship on all future papers. A position back at the lab. Recognition. After you've already claimed sole credit." "How generous," Sophia said bitterly. "Be practical, Sophia. No one else will hire you now. This is your way back." The words stung because they contained a grain of truth. Her reputation was tarnished, perhaps irreparably. But returning to work under Marcus's shadow. I need time to think, she said finally. We're leaving tomorrow afternoon. Don't take too long. Marcus's tone made it clear he expected her acquiescence. Outside, Ethan was waiting, concern evident in his expression. What did he want? As they walked back to the cabins, Sophia explained Marcus's proposition. Ethan listened silently, his jaw tight. You're considering it, he said when she finished, his voice carefully neutral. It's my research, Ethan, my life's work. Under his terms, his control. They had reached Sophia's cabin. She turned to face him, conflicted emotions churning within her. What choice do I have? My career, you could start again, Ethan interrupted. Write a book about your research. I have connections in publishing. Sophia shook her head. It's not that simple. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Ethan took her hands in his. Just don't make a decision based on fear. You deserve better than to work in that man's shadow. Before she could respond, Ethan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my publisher. I should take this. Sophia nodded, grateful for the interruption. I need some time alone anyway. To think. Ethan kissed her forehead. I'll come by later? Please. Inside her cabin, Sophia paced, Marcus's offer playing in her mind alongside Ethan's words. Her career versus her dignity. Her research versus her self-respect. An hour later, a knock at her door revealed not Ethan, but the lodge receptionist. Holding an envelope. Mr. Mercer asked me to deliver this, she said. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. Emergency meeting with publisher. Have to return to New York tomorrow morning. Back in 2 days to finish our conversation. Whatever you decide about Marcus, know that I meant every word. Sophia sank onto the sofa, the note clutched in her hand, feeling suddenly adrift. Tomorrow she would face Marcus alone. And whatever decision she made would set the course for her future. A future that, until Ethan, she couldn't have imagined including anyone but herself. Part 5. Roots and Wings. The dawn broke with a clarity that seemed almost deliberate, as if the mountains were offering Sophia one final perfect day to make her choice. She had barely slept, her mind churning with possibilities, regrets, and hopes still too fragile to name. She dressed and packed methodically, her reservation ending today regardless of her decision about Marcus. Through her window, she could see his group loading luggage into their vehicles. They would depart after lunch, expecting her answer, and possibly her presence in their caravan back to civilization. Ethan's cabin stood silent next door, his rental car already gone. 2 days, he had promised. But what might change in 2 days? Sophia stepped onto her porch, breathing in the pine-scented air. A movement caught her eye, the lodge receptionist approaching with another envelope. Special delivery, the woman said with a knowing smile. Came by courier this morning. Inside was a thumb drive and a note in Ethan's handwriting. For your research. Use as needed. I believe in you. Curious, Sophia took the drive to her laptop. It contained a single document, a draft of Ethan's new novel, already 100 pages long. The protagonist was a brilliant female botanist whose revolutionary research was stolen by a jealous colleague. But instead of accepting defeat, she fought back, using her detailed journals and the help of an unexpected ally to expose the truth. Tears blurred Sophia's vision as she read the dedication page. To S, who showed me how to begin again. The story wasn't just fiction, it was a roadmap. Ethan had outlined exactly how his character reclaimed her research and her reputation. The legal steps, the evidence required, the allies needed. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was something Sophia hadn't had before. A plan. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Leaving at 2. Need your answer.